Okay, this is a video for Watercolor 1 regarding the peppers that were assigned, and some of the questions were, how do I lift the paint once it's on the paper? I don't really care for that color. How do I fix mistakes? So let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, you want to, if you're going to remove an area of color, say perhaps this color here was darker than I intended, or a muddy color, you want to use a very clean brush and lay fresh water down on top. You don't want to scrub that area, you just want to moisten it. Once you have moistened it, let it rest. I like to use an angle finder brush, and this one is by Princeton, the Velvet Touch company. It's an angular shader, 1/4 inch. I like it because I can move large areas of paint, or I can turn it and remove very thin areas of paint. Once that water has been absorbed into the paint itself, now without scrubbing, I'm going to lift away the paint in that area. So you can tell that just little by little, that paint is lifting off. I don't want to scrub it because that causes pilling of the paper surface and will damage the paper surface. So I can take this pretty much down to that original red-orange mix and lighten the color in that area. What I also want to do is tap that area with a tissue. I like to use a Kleenex tissue, actually, because they're very absorbent and they're softer than most paper towels. I can go back in. I can carefully work around that edge. And as you can see, that color is lifting very nicely. Now you may not be able to lift all of the color back to the paper surface because the paint is staining, of course, and that is a limitation. But you can lift off color, move it around a little bit, like what I'm doing here. And once it's set and really dry, then you can go back and apply a fresh coat of color on top. So I would want to brighten this. I would come back on top of it with a nice, the yellow green, or I'm sorry, this is the bright green that's in this area. I would want to use the yellow that was mixed in with this bright green, which is a yellow green, and place that on top. Also, if you didn't reserve enough area for the highlight, you can go back in and pick out the highlight on the paper. Say, for instance, I wanted a highlight here. So the paint is dry, and I'm just kind of scraping away some highlights to help emphasize different areas in the painting. Once those areas have been scratched or picked at, you want to use a polished stone. I prefer agates. What I'm using is one of my gilding tools. This is a agate burnisher. And what I'm doing is I'm laying the paper fibers back down onto the paper so that if I want to put another wash of color over top, I can easily do that. So I'm just gonna, I'm not digging into the paper, I'm just scraping off the top of the paper. So that's one way to bring those really nice highlights back. Okay, this isn't quite dry. You want to always work on your piece after, when you start fixing mistakes, by going in and allowing the area to dry. There is another tool, which is the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser without soap. I dip it into clean water and remove as much of the water as possible. And you can go in and also lift out color off of your artwork directly. And as you can see, the paper is pilling up a little bit. And that is because I worked on a very dry surface. The paper is pilling up because the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser is like a very fine emery board. It can damage your paper surface. So I would be very aware of that. So this is lightly damp. I'm going back in with my tissue to lift up some of that color. So I can go in and rectify my color mixes, remove any areas that the colors got perhaps a little bit muddy. I'm going in here just with the angle shader and lifting the paint without wetting the surface. So the brush itself is doing the work, and it's got fresh, clean, nearly damp bristles. There we go, bringing out a highlight there. So that is another way that you can go in and rectify color mishaps, or you want to bring a highlight back into your piece. I also use my fine brushes, super fine brushes, and since they point up really nice, I will load the point with a little bit of paint and go around the edge of the subject to clean up edges, number one, and number two, just to provide a bit of a halo. So I'm going to demonstrate that here. So I am going in with a color a little lighter than the highlight on the edges, and then I'm just laying down a little bit of a color halo. You can see how that's helping with the form, cleaning up the edges, bringing some nice light into the piece. Okay. Now the most important part is to let it dry. Okay, I hope this helps. Help with any of the questions that you all may have had, and we'll continue to learn more in our next class. Thank you for your time.